Head to AFL headquarters, and Gillon Mclachlan is with us on AFL 360. Gil, welcome.
Hey Jared, Robert.
How ultimately will you determine whether the season opener does get played on Thursday night?
Well, I think in things as big as this, and this is as big as it's happened in my lifetime, I think, and certainly the biggest thing this country's faced for a long time, the industry will get to a conclusion. Now, whether that's tomorrow or the next day, we'll get there. And I've been talking regularly to presidents and CEOs and Paul Marsh and players, and I think we'll land in the next little bit, and it'll be an industry decision.
Do you feel in your heart that it's less likely or more likely?
I don't know. I mean, our priority is the health and welfare of our whole community, football community, the broader community. And our number two is clearly making sure we have an industry at the end of this. It is so uncertain, it's moving so fast. You know, I was certain, a few days ago, and there's more questions now, and things changed through the day today. So, I'm optimistic we'll know by the end of the day tomorrow. But we all have to feel comfortable about this when we're balancing the two up, and that's why it's, presidents, CEOs, players all leaning in on this, because everyone's aligned on this. And obviously the human aspect is number one, but there was also everyone's committed to this industry, and there's livelihoods and the emotional part of football, and everyone wants it to go on for the supporters and for what it can do for our community and what it does for communities all the time. So, that they're at odds a bit with the human aspect to people needing to deliver both on the field and in administration for their clubs, for the league, and ultimately that means for all the football community, for the supporters and the members and the people who this is so important in their lives. And I think it's going to be as important as it's ever been at stages this year.
How do you weigh up, Gil, judging the money versus health and well-being of the community?
Well, you take on the health, you take the best advice on that from the appropriate people, and we're lucky to have a dialogue with the chief medical officers, certainly in this state and elsewhere. And so you don't take any risks. So that's number one, that we would never do anything that put anyone at any additional risk to what's going to be created by this virus. So that's clear. And then there's the elements that are emotional about this, and then you obviously that you've got to make tough decisions to make sure we all stay afloat. So they all go in the pot.
Can I get on to the players, Gil? Two things. It's been reported tonight that the AFL has asked the players for a 20% pay cut. And secondly, if some players said to the AFL, we're really concerned about playing this weekend, the question is, how many players would it take for the AFL to postpone round one? For them, how many to say they're concerned? 5, 10, 20, 100? What's the cut-off point there?
Well, there's not a number, Robert. That's why I said it'll be an industry decision. And I've been talking a lot with Paul Marsh, and I'm looking for his leadership to say where are we at here? Because it's not going to be votes or thing. I think the whole industry is got views, and then eventually the right people have to lead. And Paul, I'm looking for his leadership with the players, and we've got the presidents are leading their clubs, and Richard and I on the board of the AFL and my management team. So it's not going to be like that. And if players don't want to play, they shouldn't play. But at some point also, we've got an industry that's got to keep moving, and there's 800 jobs, and players have got livelihoods. So they've got all of the same issues I do, managing the two.
You spoke about the waffle today, the sandful, the kneeful, the VFL. They've all been postponed. We have a lot of people playing suburban leagues, and we have a lot of people playing in country leagues who are probably sitting there tonight at home wondering what's going to go on with their footy season. Can you sort of shed some light on any decisions being made there?
Hasn't been finalised. I think they're working through that, and there will be a decision in the next 24 hours. You know, ultimately the administrators of the league, you know, are the ones responsible for that in the same way the SANFL and the WAFL, the commissions over there, responsible for their leagues. We'll obviously have a recommendation and a strong view, and we should be getting there by sort of, you know, sometime tomorrow.
How did you ultimately decide, or when did you decide to abandon the 198 games and come up with the new fixture of 17 rounds?
I don't know, about an hour before the press conference. That's a bit flippant, but not much. You know, it's moving. It's obviously been something we've been talking about. There's costs to it, but the more information we have, the more that we realise we have to have flexibility to get a season away. And if you make the decision now, and all the supporters can invest in the fact that everyone will play each other once, and that there's integrity in the season, and they know we're determined to get there, and that we have flexibility to get there, no matter we think whatever, you know, within reason, whatever's thrown at us, then I think people can invest in it, and they'll have to take some leaps of faith that sometimes we might have stoppages, or things might be set down for a while, or we might have to play more game, you know, 3 games every 2 weeks, or whatever it is. But if people know that there's a 17-game season and finals series, and there will be a premiere this year, and we then have that integrity to deliver on the flexibility, I think that's the sort of core of the decision making.
In the advice you're being given, when is likely the peak period of the pandemic in Australia? And if you are stopped, what's the period you're likely to be stopped for?
Well, that varies, Jared. You know, I think the peak moves around, and I think part of it's related to how successful these measures, you know, these sort of containment measures have been put in place. You know, I think sort of June's a consensus number for peak. I think the next few weeks are going to be interesting, but you know, there's different measures that keep coming in.
Gil, you said today in your press conference that if a player tests positive, there'll be a 14-day reset. What would happen if they're out for 10 days, the clubs, and another player tests positive day 10? Does that mean there's another reset for 14 days? And if there's a third person, is that another reset for 14 days?
I said in the first instance this weekend, or you know, in the right up close, Robbo. There's a whole series of protocols that have gone out to the clubs, and then it depends on how the players are managed and how they're isolated, and therefore how much, whether there's been close contact or you know, there's a whole series of protocols then to protect and hopefully put resilience into the clubs ongoing. Now they're not there yet, and that's why you know, that's part of the discussion. But at some point they'll build in resilience mechanisms where, you know, the list is not all in the same rooms together. There's broader squads. There's a whole series of things that they can do to build resilience that hopefully means there's a healthy squad available at all times, and that's part of what they're working through, and it's part of why we go to a broader list, and it's all the sort of resilience stuff that's been contemplated about keeping the players healthy and on the road.
We revealed this afternoon that the AFL executive will also be taking pay cuts. I think you confirmed that at your press conference today. How important is it for the AFL to lead the way on that front? And secondly, Gil, I think you said recently that your future at the AFL would depend on the health of the competition and the health of the league. I think they were your words. Would you have to rethink your future at the AFL, bearing in mind that the consequences of this coronavirus could be felt for many a year?
Well, I don't know quite what the question is. In terms of everyone sharing the financial pain, absolutely.
The second question is, does this coronavirus has any impact on your future in the AFL, with the AFL?
In what sense, Robert? I mean, my job right now is to get us all through.
How long will that take?
I don't know. If I knew that, then I should probably be advising Canberra rather than the other way around. This is so uncertain. It's moving all the time, and even the experts don't know. I think this is we're in truly uncharted. I know people use that word, but we're in uncharted territory, and we're just going to have to stay agile and work together to get to the end here, because it's going to be. You might have a rule book today, it won't apply tomorrow.
Have you asked the players to take a 20% pay cut?
I'm not going to comment specifically, Jared, other than to say clearly we've spoken to everyone across the board is going to have to share the pain and the responsibility of getting this industry and our 18 clubs through. So that starts with me clearly, but it applies everywhere, to clubs, to players, to administrators, cutting programs. We'll do whatever we need to, and we'll have to do it, and everyone will have to put their shoulder to the wheel on this. And I think everyone accepts that. I haven't had anyone telling me that they don't get that and understand that's what's going to have to happen.
The NRL spoke graphically yesterday about the financial threat to their game. They used the word catastrophic on numerous occasions. Do you face the same threats of financial ruin that they identified?
We've got some big decisions. I mean, in the end, we are an industry that earns, huge, high revenue base with a huge, high commensurate cost base. Now, what's happened is when you're a business that relies on people, being able to put games on and people come to them and watch them on TV to deliver the revenues to fix up your cost base, when suddenly people suddenly can't go to the footy, and there's potentially a risk of putting on the games and therefore you can't get the broadcast dollars, it's suddenly your business is in jeopardy. And, I think everyone understands that, but it's, our business is about putting on games of football so people can come and watch, and that's how we make our money, and sponsorship and a few others as well, but they're the core of it. So if they're not available to you and you've got a huge fixed cost base, it's challenging. That's where we're at, and it's our job to work through and solve that. And that's why, in solving that, one of the critical things we've got to do to deliver for our partners, our sponsors, our broadcasters, is deliver a season. Deliver a 17-game season with finals. And if we can do that, we'll get through. And that's why we've made this big step today to hopefully give us the flexibility to get through. And we'll have to make other decisions and move and, as I said, be agile. But we do that, and everyone works hard and works together like they are, we'll get there.
Will you seek federal government assistance?
The first thing we've got to do is deal with what we've got in front of us, Jared, is do our best endeavours to get a business model that can get us through this year. And we're doing that, and we've made a big decision today, clearly working with our broadcast partners and others on all the implications. That's, I think, a bit further down the track.
Gil, just one question.
Yeah, I think so. I think the Prime Minister said there's a lot of people who are going to be in trouble here. It's the first pass is on us to sort our problems out.
Gil, I spoke to an AFL chief executive today, and he was very fearful about the under-18 competition, which in turn made him very fearful about this year's national draft, which made him very fearful of jobs for recruiters and all around the country. Have you got any update on the under-18 competition, and do you hold the same fears that this year's national draft will be impacted greatly?
Clearly, there's been discussions about the NAB League. I don't think they've landed on a decision on that, but I think that there's a fair chance that won't go ahead. I'll be honest about that. I don't know if it's definitive yet, but that's certainly where it was going. The NAB League won't be going ahead either. It'll just look different, Robbo. The talent will be there in whatever form and however much they get to play. There'll still be the same talented kids that were going into the draft this year at the end of the year. They're just, highly likely won't be as developed and as exposed as they would have been in previous years. So the talent will still be there, and it probably makes the recruiters even more valuable than they were when the talent was more exposed.
Gil, as we let you go, do you know any more about the Scott Pendlebury test? Do you know whether there's a result on that?
No, I don't. Well, my advice is there is no result on the test, but I might be wrong. I mean, I get that sort of stuff almost like you do through the media a bit.
Yep. Yep. Thanks for your time tonight, and good luck for what lies ahead.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Gillon